All right. I believe we are live. You have to pardon me, kind of learning on the job here. This is my first time doing a YouTube live, but welcome. Thank you for being here. I think there's already some people here, so we see some comments. Trevor, how you doing? Welcome back. You are here with Speedrun Seeds. My name is Ben. This is our weekly live that we do. Typically, we've been doing these on Facebook, but we've been looking for a better platform to do this on for a long time, and I think we hopefully have found it here with YouTube. So I'm sure we'll run into some unique little quirks that YouTube has, but we're very much looking forward to being able to do this. And a little bit more efficiently. Like on Facebook, I was having some issues of not being able to see all the comments that were coming through. So I hope that's not going to be the case here. I see some already coming through in the chat there, and it seems like a lot of people prefer YouTube over a lot of other platforms for live streaming. So I think that we should be all good on that, which hopefully means that we can even go back into doing some trivia giveaways, which would be great. I really like doing those. And Trevor, yeah, I got the official mic here. Trying to make things a little bit more presentable. When I did the live last time, and I realized that I guess maybe I was getting too close to the microphone. So if you guys notice that my voice is coming through like too loud, or if it just sounds weird or wrong, let me know and I'll move it farther or closer. I think I need those headphones that streamers wear, like so they can maybe hear themselves, or I don't know how that works. But Brandon, okay, cool. It says I'm perfect right now. Awesome. I'm always perfect. I think that's just me being me. But oh, you meant the mic. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, perfect. um, so Justin, good to see you. Brandon, Ian, Trevor, thanks for being here. Tonight, we are going to be talking about equipment and a few different approaches to grow equipment and choosing equipment that works for you, budgeting for your grow, budgeting for buying specific new equipment if you already have some stuff, and you're looking to upgrade something like your light, or you're looking to upgrade even your tent. How do you make these decisions? There's so many different crazy number of brands out there. How do you know, okay, yeah, what should I be spending? $150? Should I be spending $750? And what am I going to get out of those purchases that maybe I wouldn't get with the other one? So yeah, I think there's a lot to talk about on this subject. So we'll make this probably a multi-part conversation that we all have here. But as far as tonight, I think I'm just going to try to cover as much as I can, broad strokes, and then we'll move on to some more specific details. We'll be doing this on the website a little bit, where we'll have some live streams that'll go into a little bit more depth on some of these subjects. But these weekly lives are we're gonna try to hit the broad strokes of this stuff. So yeah, and as far as announcements, we do have a restock tonight. So we have all of the newer strains that are out of stock. Everything that's out of stock except stone fruit is going to be restocked tonight. So within about an hour of the live here ending, we'll try to get that up as quickly as possible. But we're going to be restocking everything that's been out of stock for the last few weeks. We're going to do our best to make sure that we're supplying enough on this restock, so that everybody who's been waiting for it and wasn't able to get it on the original drops is able to pick it up this time. Because the God particle that sold out so much faster than we expected, and the Pound Dog F5, even on the restock, that one again, it just sold out way faster than what we intended. We're not trying to make these difficult for you guys to get. We want everybody to try the genetics. It's just it's hard to gauge exactly how much we should stock, and how quickly they're going to go. So on this restock here, we're going to do our best to make sure that there is enough so that everyone can pick some up. And that's the Holy Fire, the God Particle, the Jehovah's Witness. Those are the three that were in the early release multi-pack, the Holy Trinity, as it were. And then the Pound Dog F5 is going to be restocked as well. We're also going to be making the cross, it was Fruit Fuel crossed with Granite Haze F4. and that one was the one where we're going to be holding a contest to name the strain. So we were hoping that when those went out, I believe those went out with the God particles. When those went out, hopefully people put some of those into the dirt, and we have it would be nice to have some people growing them right now, and we can have some input onto the personality of the strain, and we can definitely post some pictures, and we can talk about what we think the direction for that strain name should go. But we would love to hear some input from everybody, and we'll probably hold an official poll once we've kind of narrowed it down to a few different options, and then people will be able to vote, and we'll choose the strain name for that one, and that'll be the next drop as soon as after we're able to name the strain. And we've got, guys, so many awesome strains lined up to be dropped. Like, we haven't even talked about them, and there are some that are just mind blowing. So I think the frostiest auto flowers I've ever seen anywhere pictured. I mean, I don't think I know. It's extremely frosty even for a photo period. And I'll release the names of some of these upcoming strains pretty soon, but I'm so excited about the new gear. Very, very excited about the new stuff coming out. So that's something to look forward to for sure. I think we might have like 10 banked that we still haven't released yet. And you might see these as freebies. So if we release a strain, we might drop another strain with it as a freebie that goes out. But overall, yeah, you're going to see these coming out pretty consistently, and we will have some of our original strains probably go out of stock. So at least for a little while, we're running low on some, and until we have another run to be able to replenish that strain or make the next generation, we'll definitely probably have some periods where we do go out of stock. Probably of maybe the citrus bubblegum and the sapphire. Those have both gone pretty quickly, and we're on working on making the next generation of those. The sapphire F2 will still be there, but the original sapphire, that one probably is going to end up being sold out. So yeah, I think those are the only major announcements. Other than that, we have a YouTube channel now, as you guys might have noticed. We're going to be posting a lot of video content moving forward. We've been filming, and we have a bunch of stuff recorded, and it's being sent to the video editor, and we're going to be posting short. I see Ian says, just got citrus bubblegum ordered Friday. Awesome. Hell yeah. That is one of my favorites. I think that's a super underrated strain, by the way. I think that one, once more people start posting pictures of it finished, it's going to become one of the more popular ones. And there's another generation of that coming out pretty soon. So, but anyway, yeah, we've got a bunch of content that we filmed, and we're going to be doing some videos on transplanting, on pruning, on training. You're going to see videos on, seed starting trays that we use, nutrient, like mixing nutrients together. So, we use salt nutrients. So getting those diluted down and mixed into a concentrate that we can add to our water tanks. Just as granular as stuff like watering techniques, you're going to see a lot of different stuff coming from us where it shows you some insight into how we grow our plants in our breeding process, what we are looking for as far as the success of those plants, and as far as the vegetative vigor, as far as the flowering progress, what we expect to see, and what we're seeing, and the adjustments that we make all the way through. We have leaf tissue analysis that we do every week on our plants, and you'll get to see some deeper insight into that. So how we take the leaf tissue samples, when they come back, what we do with the data, and how we react to, let's say we have some of our nutrient levels, our calcium comes in a little bit low. How we calculate, I'll be standing in front of a whiteboard. We've got it all set up. So how we calculate exactly how much more calcium do we need to add, and what do we expect to see next week on that leaf tissue analysis based on the changes that we're making now. So we're all really excited about that. You're going to start to be able to see some more people from Speedrun, not just me. I'm sure you guys are already getting tired of me. So a little bit more variety there. Pete asks, any skunk seeds coming? We have refrained from calling any of our genetics anything like legacy strains or really commonly known strains, even if somewhere in the lineage there is one of those, like a skunk strain or like a blue dream or something. We refrain from calling them that because we don't believe that they are that. I think there's something completely unique and new and different, and that it deserves its own name. So we do have genetics coming out that are specifically bred for that like gassy, skunky, like diesel fuel, but like dead skunk on the road, that kind of smell. And those, we have a number of those that we've been working on for a long time, and that's what we would say is we've got stuff that with skunky terpene profiles, but I wouldn't say that we have something that we would call a skunk strain. Trevor says, I have some old school skunk photos from Old Timer One Original Genetics. I can send them to you to cross. Oh, that's thank you for the offer. Yeah, I mean, so we are doing some work with photo periods and crossing them with autos. That's a multi-year project, taking a photo period, crossing it with an auto, and then stabilizing it to the point of somebody being able to grow them and not ever really see a photo period plant pop up. Because we've had that with our genetics. And okay, says, oh, I don't know. Sorry, were you offering that to Pete, not me? My bad. um, but uh, but yeah, so just lost my train of thought. So we know that photo period genetics, when crossed with autos, we've seen it happen. We've seen when the the larger the number of plants that you put out of a particular batch or in a particular run, depending on the photo period, or sorry, the autoflower genetic, you might see out of 200 of them, you might see one of them pop up that just never flowers on on the schedule that the others are, and maybe it's a really long autoflower. Some people call those super autos, and we just breed away from that. We don't really have anything that we've bred toward like being a 120 or 130-day plant. And for some people, they might want that. You get much larger yields because you veg for longer. But for us, if we see a plant that doesn't flower in time, it always just dies. It always gets killed. So all of that to say, taking a photo period strain and crossing it with an auto, there's a lot of stabilization and back crossing that needs to happen to get it to something that we could sell and say, yeah, this is definitely an auto, and you're not going to see any photo period traits and the photoperiodic traits. And that's something that we are working on. We have had a lot of people offer to send us some genetics, some landrace stuff, some stuff from other side of the world, and definitely we're interested in bringing those in and working with them a little bit. But we have to also be pretty selective about the genetics that we choose to work with, because it is such a long project that we really need to make sure that we love what we're starting with, for sure. So like the newer fast flowers, Ian, I think you might be talking about 420 fast buds. They released a whole line about of fast finishing photo periods, and that's a result of crossing a photo with an auto. So you cross a photo with an auto and you end up with a percentage that is autoflower. You end up with a percentage that is still photo period. You end up with a percentage that are slow autos that just take longer to start flowering, but they will start flowering under 24-hour light, or 18/6 or 20/24. And then the other thing that you end up with are fast finishing photo periods. So you end up with photo periods that do require a change in the actual photo period in the number of light hours per day, but they finish way faster. And that's something that you can breed toward. And that is something that we are working on as well. It's one of the offshoots of crossing photos with autos. And it's something it's become way more popular, especially in this area in Southern Oregon. It's become really popular for growers to, if they find a really good strain that's a fast finishing photo, that they will plant a whole field of it or a whole field of those strains, and they'll be able to harvest in late September, or very early October, as opposed to harvesting in late October or early November. They'll be able to cut down everything a whole month early. The plants get nice and big. The results are really good. So it's becoming more popular. I wouldn't say it's new. I think 420 Fast Buds just released a bunch of those, which I think was a great idea on their part, and I hope people enjoy those genetics. Haven't seen any of them personally, but yeah, I mean it's they some of their stuff has definitely come out pretty good. So okay, let's see. make sure I'm not missing any initial questions here before we move into the bulk of what we're going to talk about tonight. Okay. Yeah. So we're going to cover grow equipment, like I said, tonight. And I'm going to start with kind of just tents. I'm going to just move from piece of equipment to piece of equipment, and I'll talk about each one a little bit. But I'm going to start here with what tent should I buy? And how do I know I'm getting one that's good for my situation? What's up, Joe, Mark, JG, Sage? How you guys doing? So yeah, I've bought a lot of tents in my time, and we have a bunch of tents at our facility. I've seen a ton of different tent brands that have popped up in the recent years. It used to be that you really only had a couple options, and now there are just every brand of light or whatever, every brand that's making a LED light and they get any measure of success and they sell enough of those, they'll put out a tent also. And then the people who are making the tents have also put out lights, and it's just become like an intermeshed just clusterfuck of what do I buy, what do I look for, how do I know if I'm getting something that's good for the price. And there's some things that you have to ask yourself before you buy a tent or before you know decide on how you're going to proceed with that. Is A, how much space do I have, and B, what's my budget, how much can I afford, and C, what am I looking to get out of this? And that's true of all equipment. Am I looking to have a tent that's going to last me 10 years and I won't ever have to get a new one? Am I looking to have a tent where I can just get my first grow done, and then I'll buy another one later on, but I just need to get a grow off right now, like I need to get going. And I really don't have that much money maybe to spend on it, but I want to be growing tomorrow, so can I get overnight shipping on one? Like there's people who are looking for that fast option and they're not looking to spend a ton of money. And then, do I want to just grow maybe 2 or 3 plants? Am I looking to fit 10 in there? Am I looking to somewhere in the middle, or just 1 plant even? What's my capacity? How much am I looking to spend on nutrients? There's a lot of decisions, a ton of factors that go into what am I going to go ahead and get to house my plants. And some people will go with like a grow room. Some people will outfit their garage, or they'll have a closet that they line with Mylar, or whatever option you go outside of a tent. But for tents specifically, I I have a gorilla tent, or we have a gorilla tent at our facility, and we also have a really inexpensive, I don't even remember the name of the brand, maybe iPower or something. It's like a Amazon brand tent. And for us, we go through tents kind of quickly. So we'll end up with, okay, we had a bunch of pollinations in this tent, and we can clean it. We can do everything we want to it. We can sanitize the insides. But after a certain point, those tents just get worn down. The zippers don't work as well anymore. And the little tray that comes with those tents, that little like water trough or whatever, those can start to tear, and water can kind of seep into the actual material of the tent, even with gorilla tents. Like this is not just specific to really cheap tents. And so the way we look at it is the size of the tent matters. Is it functional? And how long are we really expecting to keep this? So we'll get a cheaper tent. We'll spend, I think we got like a 4x6 tent recently for, I think it was $150 or something. And that's way cheaper than what you're going to spend on a gorilla tent, or even like an AC Infinity tent. And when it comes to the end of the day, there's like three grades of grow tents, really. That's the way that I see it. There's the cheaper tents, and there's a ton of brands of them. And then there's like the mid-range. AC Infinity is a really good example of a mid-range tent where it is nice. It has a lot of good features. There's a lot of good other auxiliary equipment that you can get for the tent from AC Infinity. I really love their product lineup. I think they're really reasonably priced. They've got a lot of good stuff. It's really well thought out. AC Infinity, I'm a big fan. So, and then gorilla tents. There's the step up, which this is like the Cadillac. It's a luxury experience. The zippers are all super nice. The material is way thicker. It's the construction of it. The poles that you use to build it, way thicker and heavier. You can get extensions to make it taller. So if you have a tent and you want to make it a foot taller, you can do that with the gorilla tents. And I haven't seen that being offered with AC Infinity, at least. There's a lot of options for that too, and I believe they have a bunch of equipment that you can get with the Gorilla tents also. So those are also, $1,000, I think, for a 10 by 10 tent, which is usually what we buy. Or you're going to spend, per 100 square feet, you're probably going to spend $1,000 or so. So if it's a, you know, 5 by 5 tent, you're probably going to spend somewhere like, I don't know what, guys, if you know how much a Gorilla tent costs for a 5 by 5, I'm expecting like what, $300 or $400 or something. So if you're not looking to spend that much, go with the cheaper tent, save up for a while and get one, another one, or get a nicer one down the line. But you're going to be able to grow just as effectively in a cheaper tent than you are in a more expensive tent. It probably won't last you as long, and it might not be as nice. You might end up with some light leaks that you have to cover up. This, the zippers might not be as light tight, and you might end up, we've gotten tents where there's been like holes in them when we build it and we have to cover them up. But for us, we weren't looking for a long-term solution. So so Joe says Vivo Sun is a pretty decent price and quality for a tent. Yeah, Brandon says I use cheap green hut tents. They're great quality, paid 75 for a 4x4. Exactly, guys. Like this, there's nothing wrong with a cheaper tent. In my experience, you're going to be able to get just as good quality plants and flower out of it that you would with a more expensive tent. It's just not going to last you as long. So that's what I'm looking at when I get a tent. And then some of the other things are, what are the options? What's the customize? How customizable is it? And for my airflow options, how I want to set up my airflow, is it set up for me to do that? Does it have the little fan ports holes and ducts, I guess? Does it have all that set up for the way I want to set up my grow? And if it doesn't, maybe I'll look for another option that does have the size ducting that I want, or it does have the number of intake and exhaust fans, holes, because that's another huge factor in growing is airflow. And also, is it going to be able to support the type of lights that I want? Is it set up for that? So keep that in mind when you're going to get a new tent, or if you're looking to buy your first tent. Set up your whole design, get your whole grow planned out before you go and buy the tent, because you might find that you want to go back and change something. So, and it might not be set up, the tent that you were looking at originally might not be set up for what you want to do. So, all right, I see opulent tents are too bad, but fail along the lines of a low to, all right, great, mid-grade quality. I'm guessing it was. The frames are solid. Cool. Yeah, yeah. There's, like I said, there are so many brands out there. It is crazy, and you're probably not going to go wrong with most of them, but you might find that the quality is a lot lower. So this is something I see kind of glazed over a lot when people talk about grow equipment. And I think this is one of the most important things. I know this is one of the most important things to consider when you are setting up your grow is, what kind of airflow am I going to have and how am I going to manage it? So there's a lot of different things, again, that factor into what kind of airflow you need and what kind of airflow that you can achieve with your budget the way it is. But there's airflow that happens inside the tent. There's circulation that happens inside the tent. There's movement of air, and that's in a lot of circumstances intended to keep the plants moving a little bit, because that helps them build some stronger structure, and it helps the plants uh, create some cellular structure and some stalk, rigidity, and what's the word I'm looking for? It helps them be a little bit more stout. It gives them a little bit more stability. So keeping your plants moving is always good. You always want to see slight movement with your plants, and interior airflow. So some little clip fans that'll go onto your corners of your tent poles, or whatever fan solution that you happen to go with inside your tent. Just make sure it's moving your plants a little bit. Like the whole plant really should just be moving a little bit, and that is what that's how you make that decision of how much do I have enough airflow? Is my plant moving quite enough or not quite enough? Is the whole plant moving or just the top? Or, that's how you make those decisions there. And then when it comes to air flowing, Justin says basically you want the leaves to dance. Yeah, right. Like you want the plant just to kind of constantly be a little salsa. And so now moving on to from airflow that's happening inside the tent, you're talking about airflow from outside the tent into the tent and from inside the tent outside of the tent. So this is Trevor asked a question that says, how much is too much air? So that's a complicated question. When you say too much air, when you say air, are you talking about how much is too much air, like force of blowing on the plant and causing it to move too much? Because you will get wind burn. So if you have a fan that's blowing on a plant and the leaves are flapping instead of just dancing, when the leaves start flapping, that's when you've got too much. That's how I've always seen it. So you can have the plants jiggling salsa, a little dance that they're going moving just a little bit, but it just says if your plant looks like it's in a hurricane, it's way too much wind, right? So you don't want the plant to be getting pushed. You want it to just kind of back and forth movement a little bit. And if you see the leaves ever flapping in the wind, it's way too much, and you're going to start to see wind burn, which on the edges of the leaves looks kind of like a white damage that starts really on the edges of the leaves, and it's from too much airflow. And so that's something that you absolutely should look out for, is never make them flap, but definitely keep them dancing. That's a good way to phrase it. So now, air movement from outside the tent, inside the tent, inside the tent, outside the tent. One of the biggest things that you kind of want to keep in mind is that not only is the fresh air important for keeping the temperature and humidity good in your tent and making sure that circulation is happening properly, but also your plants are consuming the carbon dioxide in the tent. So when you have a closed tent and there's no fresh air coming in and no fresh air going out, those plants are breathing in that carbon dioxide, they're breathing out oxygen, and the carbon dioxide level in your tent is going to drop. So keeping fresh air moving from outside your tent in and from inside your tent out is one of the best ways to maintain your CO2 level at environmental levels if you're not supplementing. So if you are supplementing, it makes it a little bit more complicated because now you're moving that air outside of the tent and you have to adjust your CO2 supplementation to account for that air flow moving through. So again, I'll go back to AC Infinity. They make really excellent duct fans or airflow fans. And you always want to make sure that you are exhausting the air at the top of your tent, the hot air coming out, and you want to make sure that you're bringing fresh air in through the bottom. So that'll help manage your temperatures. Unless it's winter and you're looking to keep your tent warmer, and then it might be beneficial. I was just talking to somebody who we kind of talked a little bit, and I made the suggestion of, why don't you pull the air in at the top and out at the bottom to pull the air over your light and over your plant to keep that warmer air passing over your plant. And that those are decisions that you want to make. Do I need my tent a little warmer? Do I need my tent a little cooler? And that's how you're going to decide where to keep your airflow. But also, this is not something I'll get into on this live here, but laminar airflow is something also to keep in mind when you have airflow that it'll follow the path of least resistance. So you'll have your intake and it's going to come in through, that the fan pushing air in on the bottom, and it's going to go straight across. If you have it pulling out the other side, it'll go straight across and out and you're going to have dead zones in the top corner and in the bottom corner because that airflow is going directly across your tent. And if you were to put the exhaust and the intake on the same side, so if this is your tent here, you put the exhaust and the intake on the same side, you're going to get a horseshoe shape. That's how the airflow works. So you're going to get a horseshoe shaped air column, and that's going to pull more air over your plant actually than putting the the exhaust on the other side of the tent, it's a little bit counterintuitive. Well, not necessarily. It's going to cover more of the actual tent itself, not necessarily your plant. So if your plant really only exists in that center area, then that airflow going across is probably not a problem. But if you're drying, let's say, in that tent, like I've had to set up drying tents before, and we decided to go with a horseshoe shaped airflow column because that covered more of the actual tent, and the stuff that was higher up had better airflow on it. And we used a little God, I'm forgetting the name of this meter, but it's a little spinny, like propeller looking thing, and you can check your airflow. It starts with an A. If somebody knows the name of those airflow meters, but here I'll look it up real quick. But yeah, so you can actually check the airflow. You hold this little device up, and the air passing through it spins the little propeller, and it tells you how many feet per second or how many miles per hour, either or, are actually going, and you can tell exactly what your airflow is in every spot of your tent. And it was pretty cheap. And these are not things that I expect a home grower to go out and buy, but you can get one. It's called a anemometer. It's called an anemometer, and they're $15 on Amazon. So it can't hurt to have to check your airflow and to really see, okay, I got really good results from that grow, and I want every piece of data that I can possibly keep and possibly keep track of to make sure I replicate those awesome results I just got. So airflow is a really big one. And if you here, this is what they look like. I'll hold this up to the camera there. So anemometer, you see it's $14.99, and that'll tell you exactly the speed of your airflow, and that might help you make decisions on what you want to change, and where you're going to keep your intake and your exhaust. Another thing to keep in mind is how many times per hour am I turning the air in my tent, which means how many full tenths worth of air am I moving out and moving in every hour. I recommend that you try to set up your CFM on your fan, which is how you decide or how you calculate how many full airflow turnovers that you have per hour. It's your CFM, which is cubic feet per minute, cubic feet of air per every minute. How many of those are being pushed out by that fan, essentially? So when you have two fans, an exhaust and an intake, your cubic feet per minute is reliant on those two, and then you multiply your length by width by height of your tent, and that of feet, and that's how you get cubic feet. So you take your cubic foot number, and then you take your cubic feet per minute number, and then you can, so let's say, just for even numbers here, you're never going to have a fan that's 10 cubic feet per minute. But let's say you had a tent that was 5 cubic feet, and your airflow on your fan was 10 cubic feet per minute. So 10 CFM fan and a 5 cubic foot space, you're going to turn that twice per minute. So it's 5 times 2 is 10. So every minute you're turning that air twice. And that's how you determine. We recommend 20 to 40 times per hour is a really good amount of airflow to run through a tent like that. So if your fan is 1,000 cubic feet per minute, you size that to make sure that you might need to add another one or add a bigger fan or a smaller one if it's too much airflow. And honestly, the number of turns per minute, unless you have such air force that it's giving your plants windburn, or if you're trying to manage keeping the temperature a little, higher, or keeping your CO2 a little different, or a little bit higher, you're not going to really run into an issue of there being too many turns per minute. But an oversized fan is not going to benefit you in any way. So there are reasons why you wouldn't want way more airflow than that. And you should definitely size your tent or size your fan to be precisely right for your size tent, which is going to be around that 20 turns per minute or 20 turns per hour. I'm sorry if I said minute before, I meant hour. So yeah, fans, definitely always make sure that you've got interior airflow coming from outside to the inside of the tent and from the inside out. Okay, so let's move on to, real quick, I'll open it up to some questions here. So I see one there. Checking out your terpene chart on the wall behind you. Where can we get one of those? this was a gift, honestly. It says Gold Leaf Limited is what it says on the bottom. So maybe you can find one. I think she said she got it on Etsy, I want to say. So but yeah, no, this thing is cool. I like it. It's got a little description of each terpene here, and they are the most common terpenes in cannabis. So like it's a cool poster. I like it a lot. This knowledge is why I will always tune in. Oh, well, thank you, Mike. So yeah, if you guys have any more questions, I will address them as I'm moving on here. I see Ian said I'm running two 3x3 tents from AC Infinity and iPower 3x3 for my dry tent. Awesome. That's a great setup. You guys, it's a little bit nicer tents for your grow and a little bit, a little bit more affordable ones for your drying. Perfect setup. So make sure I haven't missed any questions here. So, all right, we'll move on to lighting. So this one I'm not going to go too deep on because we could do an entire episode just on lighting. So I'm going to tell you what I look at when getting an LED light. And this is for a home grow, not for commercial. Different considerations for commercial and for home grow. So there's a lot of figures and numbers that are used by light brands to advertise their lighting. And not all of those numbers are important. So, one of the biggest ones that you see from all of these lighting companies is their efficiency, the number of micromoles of light per joule of electricity. And that is a figure that for you, for the home grower, is not going to affect your bottom line really in any way. You're not going to see a much larger electricity bill from something that has 1.8 micromoles per joule or something that has 1.5 micromoles per joule. So it might indicate that the light is maybe built a little bit better, or they're getting the most out of their parts, or the diodes might be a little bit better. But they're going to advertise their Samsung LM310 diodes or whatever, and they're all going to have LM310 diodes pretty much at this point. Some of them won't, I guess, and that maybe you want to look for a diode that's a little bit nicer, and that's there's no issue with that. I know there's other brands of diodes out there, but the Samsung ones are the most popular. And within that diode, they're not inside the diode, but when you're looking at those diodes, if you guys know anything about like computer parts, so let's say you're looking at a graphics card and you're looking at the new NVIDIA 3090 graphics card. That graphics card is the best of the best, and it is the most expensive. And then there's a NVIDIA 3070 graphics card. And then there's a whatever's below that, 3030, let's say, I don't know, 3050 maybe. So, or 3060, I guess. I think they do the 60. So yeah, you've got these three levels of graphics card, and what's the difference? Really, the difference is they're not manufactured as well. So the nicest one is manufactured to perfect specifications. Everything that they intended to do when they manufactured that driver or the graphics card or these diodes came out perfectly. And that makes it the top most expensive one, 3090. Now let's say there's something inside that graphics card that just isn't working quite as well, doesn't do as good of a job as those 3090s. They move it down to the 3070 level and they still sell it. And then the next ones just have one other thing, so for example, my MacBook right here, I've got a MacBook Pro, and it is I believe this one has a 7-core processor. And the reason is because they were trying to make an 8-core processor. One of the cores doesn't work. So they turned it into a 7-core processor and they put it in the cheaper version of their laptop. Fine. The laptop works great for me. So there's different LM310. I think it's LM310. If I'm saying that wrong, somebody correct me. But there's different LM310 diodes, but they're all LM310 diodes, and they're going to do pretty much the same thing for your practicality of your home grow. So don't spend too much time worrying about that. Then also, and also don't spend too much time worrying about that efficiency number. If it's somewhere in like the 1.5, 1.4, 1.8, whatever, they're all good. It's all going to be fine. Really what you're looking for does it have a par map that's going to work for my tent. So is this light big enough to cover my tent, or do I need two of them, or do I need a different shape of light? If I have a 4x6 tent, do I need a light that's a little bit longer? Do I want two smaller lights? How do I handle that? And you're going to shape your light to fit your tent. And something I tell people all the time that I will continue to say, I would every day, any day, rather have a less expensive light with a par meter than a more expensive light without a par meter. So I'll say that again. I would any day go and buy a cheap Amazon light that will do the job and a par meter. If let's say my budget is $300 for a light, or even less. Let's say my budget is $200 for a light. I would rather have $100 light and $100 par meter than a $200 light. 100%. So whatever your budget is for a light, I would absolutely try to fit a par meter into your budget, because you can always move an LED light closer to a certain extent. You can't always move it closer. I mean, there's a certain point where you getting too close, and the heat and the light intensity at the top is so much different from the light intensity at the bottom. But that is something that makes so much sense to consider, which is, how do I measure how much light my plants are getting? And if you have no way to measure how much light your plants are getting, you're trusting that par map that those people who sold you that light put out on, let's say, the Amazon page. You're looking at that par map, which is that little square that has, the numbers usually is red in the center, and it gets more yellow as it goes toward the outside. And it'll say, it's got 1100 PPFD par right in the middle, and then it drops down to 700 and 600 and 400 on the edges. And maybe that's what they got in their perfect little setup when they measured it, but maybe they're just throwing that out there and it's not the real par map and or PPFD map. Yeah, that could be a lie, and you want to be able to check that with your own readings. And even if you buy an Amazon light that's cheap and a par meter, and you get a reading that doesn't match what the par uh, map said on the website, then just return it and get a different one. I'd rather do that than trust blindly that my $150 light is actually what it says it is online. So these are just things to keep in mind. Definitely, if you can afford to add a par meter into your setup, into the equipment that you have, absolutely do it, because it is one of the biggest factors in deciding the success of your plants. Is how close can I get them to my light? How close do I need to have my light to them to get the right amount of light distribution and the right amount of light intensity? And what what is the light intensity at the top, and what's the light intensity of the bottom at the bottom of my canopy? And that's really going to determine, is my plant getting good light penetration and good spread of that light intensity all over. And sometimes people will have like a light hotspot where there's really nothing they can do. It is just so much more powerful on this one spot in their tent. So you just rotate your plant every day. Just make sure that one day the left side of the plant is under that brighter spot, and then turn it the next day. You've got your plant balanced, so you're getting at least a better spread. And while you're watering, you might as well just turn the plant, and that way you're not, the entire life of the plant is not more intense on one side and less intense on the other. Solutions. So yeah, deciding on how many lights you require for your tent. Let's say if you've got a 10 by 10 tent, you got a big one, you're probably going to need 4 lights. And that's something you're going to look for, the light that's going to have a good distribution on for each quadrant of your tent. And then you're going to have some overlap over, when your light, you have one light here and one light here, that spread is like a cone coming out of the light. So you're going to have some overlap there, and use the par meter to check right there and make sure that your intensity is what you want it to be. Highly recommend that. So see if I wrote anything else down for lights. Spectrum. Yeah, adjustable spectrums are great, but full spectrum, I would say, is better. There are great. What's a good par meter for home grow that's not expensive? I believe it is Hydro Builder. I will post a link for it in the group there. but the one that I always recommend to people, I'll pull it up right now just so I'm not forgetting what it is. Um, but it's about 140 or $150 and par meter. PhotoBio is the brand sold by Hydro Builder. It's called the PhotoBio Advanced Quantum Par Meter, and that's what you're looking for. You're not looking for um, a lumen meter or a lux meter, or they call it foot candles sometimes. You're not looking for that. You are looking for a quantum par meter. That's the only thing that's going to tell you the amount of light that your plants are seeing. A lux meter or a lumen meter is going to tell you how much light the human eye can see. Two very different numbers. You're looking for photosynthetically active light radiation is what you're measuring with that par meter. And it's very important that you measure that and don't use one of those phone apps because your phone does not have the hardware to measure photosynthetically active radiation. It's going to convert. It's going to use an algorithm to convert the brightness that it's seeing with its camera to par based on some assumptions about that light, not the reality. And it could be correct in those assumptions, and you might get the same reading sometimes. Don't rely on it. It's not telling you a real number. It's telling you a guess. So yeah, just if you're going to look for par meters, use a real par meter and not a lux meter or your phone. See, what's a good par reading on average? Sorry if you said it and I missed it. And then, are the apps any good for checking par, like Tent Buddy or Photon? Okay, so yeah, I just covered the apps. I'll say first, it's a little bit 10 more seconds on that is just what it's doing. It's making assumptions about the type of light that it's seeing, and then it's using a calculation and an algorithm to say, okay, I'm assuming that this is a LED light and it's got this spectrum or whatever, and none of this is UV. It's just making all these assumptions, and then it's converting the brightness that it sees with the camera to par. And like I said, sometimes it might get it right, and sometimes it might be completely off. So that's what you're risking when you're using one of those apps. And then what's a good par reading on average? So your plants early on in the seedling stage, they can be around 2 to 300 ppfd, and as you move further into veg, you're looking at somewhere around 600, 5 to 700 or so, in that, average of 600. And then as you get into flower, depending on how much CO2 you have and depending on how efficient your feeding is, and there's a lot of things that affect what your light intensity should be. If you're pushing your plant as hard as you can possibly push it and you have everything is perfect, and you're trying to find the right light intensity for your perfect grow, you could go all the way up to 14 or 1500 ppfd. Most people at home are not going to have CO2 supplementation. Their feeding is not going to be precisely perfect. And you're not going to have the perfect humidity. You're not going to have the perfect airflow. And temperature. So what you really are looking for is somewhere in the range of 900 to 1000 ppfd max for most people. The better your system is, the more efficient and uh, the more perfect your numbers are, the higher you can make that number because the plant can handle more light because it's getting other inputs that are better. So let's see here. I only have like 12 minutes left. I've been rambling on just lights and tents. Like I said, we could talk about this subject for a while. So I'll talk about humidifiers. Make sure when you get a humidifier that it's always better to use reverse osmosis water, because a lot of your like ultrasonic humidifiers and so even some of those steam humidifiers, they don't do a great job filtering, and they will put, if you're using like hard water from your sink, they will put a film of hard water, of like calcium buildup, of mineral buildup on all of your equipment. So it'll ionize, or it'll distribute all that water into your tent, and it'll settle on the and dry on your equipment, and it'll leave a film. So try to use distilled or reverse osmosis water for your. I use distilled. It is getting expensive. Hey, it's I've always seen it like somewhere around $1 per gallon at the store. I haven't I'm not usually the one that goes to buy the water, so I'm not really sure exactly how much it costs these days. But yeah, distilled water is better. Use a humidifier that can get you to the right humidity, honestly. And depending on your airflow, it's going to be different for a lot of people. But Brandon says it took him forever to clean his entire tent after using tap water in my humidifiers. I bought water distiller off of Amazon for 75 bucks. So there you go. If a gallon is $1, then you just 75 gallons later, that's paid for itself. Great idea. I buy RO water, and yeah, it's like $1.22 per gallon now. So it'll pay for itself even faster. Um, so Ron was asking if is there any grow off news. The grow off beans went out, and one of the competitors is up in Canada. So that when those get there, he's probably going to be the last to receive his. But early this week, people should start receiving their grow off beans. And then I'm going to make, once everybody has received them or once they all show is delivered, I'll make a group chat with all the people who won the spots. And then we'll choose on a new date to start. Once everybody there agrees on, okay, we're all going to start our beans on this date. And we will, I'm excited to see everybody posting weekly pictures. So that's going to be fun. We're going to get to see a grow diary from everybody who's competing. So that's something to look forward to. But that's how that's going to work, Ron. What about DLI? So DLI, daily light integral, that is a subject where I'm not going to say there is a perfect number, and I'm not going to give you guys, that's a completely different live stream, just talking about lighting in general and lighting as it relates to your plants and how to use your lighting. But I believe we keep our DLI at like 40, high 40s or something. Pretty sure. I always have it. We have all that written down. I have trouble remembering that number precisely, but I believe that's what it is. And you're going to want to put a lot of thought into how many light hours you're choosing, what intensity you're choosing, and what that really means for your whole plant. So if the top of your plant is getting way more light intensity than the lower half of your plant, and the number of light hours that you're going with and the intensity of your light, those are all things that kind of create this complicated mesh of factors that are DLI. And what is the perfect DLI? It also really depends on your other factors in your grow: CO2, feeding, watering frequency, airflow, humidity, temperature. All of these things play a huge part in what DLI you should have. So we'll get into that on another stream, but we're already 8 minutes to the end here. So I'm going to real quick, I covered humidifiers just a little bit. Let's see here. I want to talk about pH pens and EC pens. I hate Blue Lab pens, and I'm not saying they don't work. They are accurate enough. Those little truncheons and the pens, they're all accurate enough for you. For me, they break really often. They are delicate. We never leave the cap off because you always want to keep your bulb for your pH pen submerged in the KCl solution. That's a potassium chloride solution. And that bulb should always be submerged in it and should come with a little packet of it. And when you buy your pH pen, you always want to make sure you buy some calibration solution along with it and keep yourself stocked up on your, that's running CO2. That's right, Justin, for our DLI. So you always want to make sure that you're stocked up on your pH calibration solution. Brandon asks, what about the soil pH pens? They're for food, soil, and shit like that. Don't use those. I'll talk about measuring your soil pH in a second here. Says, I can't wait to try the new Speedrun nutrients. Any news on the release on those, Ben? Yes. So we will have a date for you guys this week. So it might not be available this week, but we're probably going to start pre-ordering very soon. So that we will be announcing a bunch of stuff about that. We're also going to be announcing stuff about international shipping. That's something that's very exciting. And we are setting that up this weekend to have available this week. We are going to be able to start, we're going to have somebody that's going to be doing international shipping for us. You'll order through them and you'll be able to get all of our genetics anywhere outside the US, any country, which is awesome. But that was completely aside from the point. So the the important thing to remember with pH is that, or pH pens, I'm sorry, is that you need to keep it calibrated. Calibrate it every single time you use it. You're probably using it every day. You know, if you're watering every day and you're making a new water solution or whatever, or you're mixing new nutrients, it always makes sense to calibrate it every time you use it. If you don't want to do that, calibrate it every 2 or 3 times you use it, because it will go off just a little bit, especially the older it gets and the older your pH pen gets, I mean. So keep it calibrated, use the 4 and the 7 solution. You know, use both solutions that it comes with, and make sure that you're doing that often enough. And then, so I see, what was that? How do I sign up for the grow off? The grow off, yeah, the grow off competitors have already been chosen, so the grow off's going to start soon. But we are going to do a Pringles cup, Pringles can grow off next to our grow off. So as soon as the real grow off starts, we're going to do a Pringle can grow off with. We're going to probably going to choose a strain, and that, or you know, maybe we'll do it. Choose a strain or supply your own whatever speed run seed strain you want, and whoever does the best Pringles can grow or plant will win a really cool prize. So that will be the grow off that everybody has a chance to compete in, and it'll be a little small space in your tent that you'll use for that too, which I think is cool. but but yeah, so we use an Oakton pH pen. That's our preferred pH pen. You can go to coleparmer.com, COLEPARMER. It's a scientific equipment uh, supplier, and Oakton pH pens are around the same price. You can get a combo pH EC pen, and it does everything. And I think it's like 200 and change. But if you're going to buy a Blue Lab pH pen and a Blue Lab EC pen, it's not that much more to get a much better piece of equipment. So I can post a link in the group again of the pH pen that we use. Much more accurate, has a third degree of resolution there. So you know, it has another decimal beyond, you know, let's say, you know, your Blue Lab will tell you that you're at like 3.2 EC, and this one will tell you that you're at 3.24 EC. And we just like to be able to measure, or pH, sorry, measure that a little bit more accurately. So small container grows are fun. Okay, yeah, I see you guys are talking about the Pringle can grow off. So yeah, that'll be fun. Hey, I might even compete personally also. I might set one up at my place and post some pictures along with you guys. I'm not obviously going to compete like to win against anybody, but I might do it along with you guys. So yeah, you know what? I think we'll kind of save the rest of this for the next live that we talk about some of this stuff, because I've got so much more here that I'm not going to be able to get into, but I'm already losing my voice too. So yeah, I think on the next one, the next little live that we do on equipment here, we will talk about more about the PAR and pH meters. We'll talk about bucket grows and the auto pots, and we'll talk about that real grower grow bucket that they put out recently. We'll talk about hydro, setting up watering systems. I love to set up a watering system. So if I were to have set up a tent in my house, you bet I'm going to go and get like a trash can to use as a water tank, and I'm going to throw a little pump in there, and I'm going to put a little Rainbird watering timer on it, and I'm going to get some quarter-inch line and some half-inch poly and build myself a little watering system that works on a schedule every, it would even water up to like 8 times per day, and the plants will always have fresh nutrients, and you're going to have very little runoff because you're watering such a small amount. The plants use all of it, and you can set it up so that you just fill your trash can however often you need to, and then you can set up your plants on like a little tray that just all funnels down into like a 5-gallon bucket for runoff, and you really don't have to do a whole lot, and it's a self-sufficient system. So I highly recommend setting up a watering system, and we'll get into how to do that on maybe another one. But we'll talk about pots. We'll talk about cloth pots versus rigid pots, seed starting trays, and then yeah, just like overall budgeting of your grow is. We'll get into that on another one. So that was a long one. I had a lot more there than I really kind of thought about how long it would take me to talk about it. Um, all right, I am going to look through here and just address any questions that are coming up right now before we end it. I see people talking about bonsai, with bonsai. I prefer, if I'm going to do a bonsai, to make it a photo period, honestly, because that gives you some time to get the stalk nice and woody, and you can really get like a nice bonsai plant if you go photo period. With auto, it's more of a challenge, and but it also doesn't get as deep into that bonsai tree style because you're gonna just, it's gonna flower so fast. Um, always, Joe asks a good question. Joe asks, is distilled or spring water better? Spring water is going to have stuff added for flavor and mouthfeel and stuff like that. It's going to have like bicarbonate. It's going to be probably a higher pH. Distilled water is better than spring water. RO water and distilled water are pretty much the same. Their RO is filtered enough. Uh, David, I see you said ppm. Do you mean like parts per million of your starting with your water, or do you mean overall ppm, or do you mean like what I've talked about before, which is calculating individual nutrient parts per million? Um, Not sure which part of ppm to talk about there, but Joe, distilled water over spring water. Just look at the ingredients of your spring water. You might see like sodium bicarbonate or something in there, and that that's going to tell you you've got a pH that's way too high. So soil ppm, right? Okay, I did say I was going to talk about this, so I'll stay for an extra minute here. The way that you measure your soil EC and pH, and Brandon has this question. I'm going to do a demonstration and we'll post a video of it. It is called a saturated paste extract. We call it a saturated media extract. You're going to brush away the first inch of your soil, take a handful of your soil and put it in like a little small Dixie cup, like a little small cup, and fill it up to about 3/4 of the way full. And then you're going to take distilled or reverse osmosis water and add it very slowly until the soil becomes completely saturated. So, like, it's like a kind of a jelly consistency when you shake the cup, and you'll know when you see it. It becomes kind of like it looks like jello almost. It jiggles. And that's when the soil is completely saturated. When you tilt the cup, you don't really see a lot of water pooling up because it's all in the soil, and that means you're at full saturation. And then you let it sit overnight, and then you take that water, so you squeeze it out of the soil. You just either squeeze it through like some cheesecloth, or you just kind of push the soil down so that there's just water at the top. Use your pH and your EC pen to measure that water. That is going to be your true EC and pH of your soil. That you can use to measure it moving forward. Same amount of water every time, same amount of soil every time. You have a consistent reading for your soil slurry test. That's probably what some people call it too. I've always seen saturated paste extract is what typically people call this test, and all ag people know how to do this. Very important that you do this instead of testing your runoff. Your runoff is not accurate because you use a different amount of water every time. Your soil is at a different moisture level every time, and the water doesn't stay in the soil long enough to dissolve some of the important things in there, like your dolomite lime, your slow dissolving stuff that affects your EC needs overnight to dissolve. So that water that pour through, that runoff test, very inaccurate, and it's caused people to make a lot of bad decisions because they've thought that their pH was high or low when really they were just using less water or more water, or their soil was a little bit more wet or less wet, or they just added some slow dissolving top dress nutrients and they thought they would see it on the EC, but you won't unless let it sit overnight. So that was the last thing here. I was about to waste money on another meter. It's in my cart. Good. Don't don't do it. Go get a par meter instead, dude. Um, all right, guys, we're already 5 minutes past here. Thank you again. I What was it? Oh, right. Okay. For the people who are still with me here, I am going to make a promo code when we put the new genetics up. You guys write this down because if you're planning on buying any of the new or the restock, I'm going to make a promo code. So if you type in, I'm going to write it down for you so you know exactly how it's spelled. Yeah, okay. All right. So people here, you will get 25% off of anything in the restock. 10 people will be able to use it. It's only going to be able to use 10 times. And this is the promo code that's backwards for you guys. It's weekly dash live, all in caps. So anybody here who is thinking about getting anything on the restock, it's weekly dash live, all in caps, and that'll work for all the stuff that we're restocking tonight. It won't be live quite yet, so that'll be probably about a little less than an hour from now. That'll be up. So yeah, weekly dash live is that promo code I talked about. Thank you for sticking with me till the end here, guys. We're on YouTube now, so hopefully this is. I hope. Yeah, I think I'm seeing all the comments that are coming in. This is awesome. We'll continue to do this here, and you'll see a lot of videos from us on here also. So enjoy your week, and I will see you guys around in the group. Yeah, thanks. Have a good one. End stream. That button right there. Did that work? Nope. Now.